We'll start now. Good evening and kia ora. Welcome to this fourth dialogue session of CCSAG. All right. So we have again a very interesting topic tonight. The topic is the UN SDGs, everyone's business to move forward faster before 2030. Now, the short introduction first. I am Ravindra Mukhya. I am the lead of CCSAG. I'm happily retired now. My last assignment was with the Christchurch City Council, where I worked for 16 years. And I've been involved in sustainability more deeply since the last 4 years. And I would ask Hayden now to give a very brief introduction, please.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Hayden Montgomerie. I'm the country manager for the United Nations Global Compact, 4 months into this role, and it's an establishment role. So I'm very pleased to join you tonight, and I look forward to sharing some slides and hopefully stimulating some conversation.
And next, the panelist, Dr. Dirk.
Thanks, Prawindra. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Doug Boddy. I'm actually the Sustainability Program Manager on the City Rail Link project at the moment in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. So I look forward to hearing all about the Global Connect, but also sharing and my thoughts on it from a sustainability point of view. Yeah, kia ora.
Thank you. And next, our next panelist, Dr. Bapon, please.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Bapon Fakhruddin. I'm the water sector lead in the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund is the world's largest climate financing, which is to support the countries to making climate resilience. It would be a pleasure to share some of the thought how that actually link with overall SDGs and climate financing. Thank you.
Okay. Now, before we start, can I request, if possible, to turn on your videos, if possible, so that we can see who we are talking to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, so an introduction of the audience now. Those who have been in this past dialogue sessions, could you kindly raise your hand? Okay.
I'm just having some problem with my camera, so I'll just try to fix that. But apologies for that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So now this type of dialogue session requires your participation. So it is an opportunity to share knowledge and ideas, to share perspectives and experiences, and importantly, to share the challenges. And what am I expecting to learn from this session? I want to learn what can project managers do to accelerate progress towards SDG goals. That's what I'm expecting to learn. So I'm very much looking forward to a rich dialogue session where all of you, well, many of you, I hopefully will participate. And I shall now welcome Hayden to make his presentation. Thank you.
Right. Sorry, I'm just getting the slides sharing. Cool. Well, good evening. I've got about 20 minutes of content, but feel free to interject or put your hands up or turn the mic on and let me know if you do have a question that might need to be answered straight away. So I'll just get right in there, and hopefully we can have a good discussion. So really, hopefully I'm going to hit the mark here, but I've got really 6 different areas. An introduction to the UN Global Compact for those who are new to this. I'll speak briefly about the UN Global Compact in New Zealand as an establishment role I'm in. We'll look at the current business environment as we look towards 2030. It's not all good news. I'll profile a SDG stocktake report, which has been recently released in partnership with Accenture. I'll speak about Forward Faster, which is an initiative, a campaign of the UN Global Compact. And just right at the end, I'll look forward a little bit to some of the key wider UN meetings and the wider context as we look towards 2030. So I'll kick off and just give you the really quick overview of the UN Global Compact. So we're a special initiative of the UN Secretary General, and we came about in 1999 when Kofi Annan went to the World Economic Forum, and you can see the quote there. He asked the business leaders of the world, I propose that you, the business leaders, and we, the United Nations, initiate a global compact of shared values and principles. So that's where the UN Global Compact came from. The World Economic Forum picked that up in 2000, and for 23 years we've been operating around the world. In that call, it mentioned principles. There are 10 principles of the UN Global Compact. I won't go into them deeply, but they're there on the screen. So they're in the areas of human rights, labour, environment, and anti-corruption. For New Zealand business people, many of them seem second nature, or we're required to meet those principles by virtue of being a New Zealand business. That's not so in every part of the world, but they are our guiding principles that shape our work. The numbers change all the time, but I think it's in different places. It depends how you count them. We have 12,000 companies and 3,000 non-business signatories who are active and compliant today. They're based in 160 countries, and around the world there are 69 local networks. I'm a country manager, so you can see from the map there, they're in the Asia and Oceania region. There are 14 Global Compact networks, one multi-country network, and one expansion country being New Zealand. So what that means is that my role as country manager is an establishment role, and the UN Global Compact hasn't been in New Zealand previously, so we're looking to set things up. So I was appointed in August after just a regular recruitment through a global recruitment campaign. My focus is on supporting the New Zealand business community to scale up their impact and looking to guide companies, participating companies to the areas where they can make the biggest impact. Look, I'm sure there will be ripple effects throughout the community as we do more and raise our profile. But right now, to date, there are 15 participants in the UN Global Compact. That's up from 9 when I joined. But as I mentioned, I'm not actually in full sales mode at the moment. We are in pre-launch mode. So we're looking to recruit foundation participant companies ahead of launch events, which will probably be in late March or April of next year. So that's what the UN Global Compact is in New Zealand right now. And I thought this might be quite useful, given you're all professionals and kind of understand we need to offer value to our members, and we do that locally and globally. But I thought this slide is quite useful for positioning of the UN Global Compact amongst the myriad of other organizations and things that companies can join. So we have the United Nations mandate and the credibility which goes with that. Our participants also can join global multi-stakeholder networks. That's really where we're working across with partnerships across both the UN and the sector to amplify the voice of business. The 10 principles and the 10 areas obviously have technical capabilities behind them, both ourselves and within our participant companies. Yet we have weight. We have 20,000 participants around the world, so that is the world's largest. And this is developing, obviously, in New Zealand. Hopefully, we are headed towards a local network here in New Zealand, which would be probably a couple of years away if I'm successful in incubating this concept here in New Zealand. But what a local network is obviously local to the country, And it just means that the engagement that we're doing with government and the wider business community who are non-participants aims to have a broader impact outside of our membership. So the business case, this is what our participants tell us. So this is when you embed sustainability in your strategy and practice, and many companies do that by participating in the UN Global Compact. They see an improvement in these areas: customer loyalty, employee relations, operational efficiency, stakeholder engagement, supplier relations, sales and marketing, risk management, media coverage, and innovation factors, which can drive greater profitability, raise the value of the company, and in certain cases can lower their cost of capital, which allows them to expand. And it can deliver short and long-term value for shareholders and the wider society. So that's all very good. That's the UN Global Compact globally and in New Zealand, but it's not all good news as we look forward for the SDGs as we head to 2030. So the UN Secretary General, who's also the board chair of the UN Global Compact, had this to say. This was a couple of months ago, but the words, I think, in UN language are actually quite strong. I'm not going to read it all. I'm going to read the last part. This is not a time for tinkering, it's a time for transformation. And I think that gives a sense of the urgency in terms of accelerating progress towards the UN SDGs by 2030. So it's no secret that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are not on track. And these are some of the Forward Faster banners, which have been, which is the start of a campaign which will roll out over the next 7 years through to 2030. But some of the headlines are startling and quite confronting. So 15% of the SDGs are on track by 2030. That obviously means 85% aren't. Partly due to COVID and the world economic challenges recently for business, we've stalled or gone into reverse on more than 30% of the SDGs. And we need to spend $3 to $5 trillion US annually to meet the SDGs. So those are some big challenges. And Sander, who is the CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, in a session in New York, said recently, companies must be more ambitious and put words into action. Forward Faster is here to guide companies on where they can make the biggest, fastest impact for 2030. So I won't go into this. We all know the world is in an interesting time. There's obviously a lot of reasons why progress has been reversed in some areas. But I think the key point here is that the private sector leadership is imperative more than ever before. There's lots of different studies into the role of business in supporting the SDGs and accelerating progress. And these are just four points that have come from different sources. The first is from an Accenture UN Global Compact CEO study, which I'll reference next. So I'll skip that one for now. But obviously, 77% of respondents believe improving societal issues is a primary business function. 59% said addressing geopolitics is a top priority for business. And 75% of people in business said governments should require large companies to work to make a better society. So those are the contextual matters at play. So now I just want to touch on a report, which is, I think, in its 12th or 13th year of publication. So it's a series. And so the UN Global Compact has done this with Accenture over many years. An SDG stocktake, and this year's report was through the eyes of the private sector. I'm just going to touch on 3 or 4 slides, the key slides. The full report, I think, is available at that link that's at the bottom of the slide. So yeah, I mean, it's a fairly easy read, and I think one of the things I'll just draw your attention to, which I haven't screenshotted or pulled out, is that under each SDG, there's actually 3, sort of a headline page, and then 3 more detailed pages under each of the 17 SDGs. So that may be worth taking a look at. As I mentioned, 85% of the SDG targets are showing either limited or no progress, or concerningly, that 30% are showing a reversal in progress. That's something that needs to focus the world. The research from the CEO study also shows that leading organizations are signaling that they're already taking action. So 95% are reporting that they understand how their business impacts on the SDGs. 91% have a public commitment towards one or more of the SDGs, and obviously through their membership of the UN Global Compact, that's one way they make that public commitment. 79% have identified a business case for advancing at least one SDG, and 78% have changed their product or service offerings to align with at least one SDG. So while on the surface that might sound like the business community globally is responding well, I guess we just need to be mindful that those are at least one SDG. Obviously, for many businesses in multifaceted areas, they should be accelerating progress in many, if not all, of the SDG goals. But business does report that they are believing in the vision of the SDGs, and I guess this is good news for the UN, who are trying to coordinate the SDGs and engage business in accelerating this progress. So 94% state the SDGs represent a unifying global vision, and 96% agree that the private sector plays a critical role for achieving the SDGs. But and perhaps this is also related to the global situation we find ourselves in economically, coming out of COVID, is that confidence in the prospect of success is waning. And I mean, that's concerning because businesses operate on confidence, as do shareholders, which obviously drives a lot of our largest companies in the world, the listed companies. I will come back to this, and maybe this will be a framework for some of our conversations in the dialogue part of the session. To deliver the SDGs by 2030, this report is showing that businesses must focus on the 10 key pathways. So broadly, that's on expand, transform, and scale. You can see the 10 points there. Recommit to the basics, provide a living wage, promote gender equality, innovate responsibly. Those are the sort of get you to the start line actions. The bigger ones are obviously accelerating climate action, advance water resilience, to protect and restore nature, and to invest in circularity. And then in terms of scale, that is to commit to sustainable corporate finance and strengthen sustainability leadership. So I can come back to that slide if that's useful later. So the UN Global Compact has, we're a voluntary initiative, so actually we don't score our companies who participate. They do provide a communication on progress, and we make that transparently available on our website for the 20,000 participant companies. So this Forward Faster campaign also is an opportunity for the UN Global Compact to ask a little more from our leading companies. So what we are doing is we're asking these companies, the leaders, to take more ambitious action, to participate in Forward Faster if they see the SDGs as a driver of growth, not just as a reputational participation or someone who's using the logo to demonstrate their commitment to the UN SDGs. We need more than that. And so we're calling on those leaders who are focused on sustainability being the future, not just a trend that they're currently involved in. So Forward Faster initiative aims to increase measurable, credible, and ambitious action from thousands of companies to deliver on the SDGs. And I believe, I think it might have been yesterday or the day before, we just hit 500 companies of those out of the 20,000 participant companies who have signed up for Forward Faster. That's important because it actually comes for the first time with measurable targets, which they will also be able to report against. So the the key point is that companies will commit to and take action on SDG aligned business targets. So I'll come to that on the next slide. But as I mentioned, it's also a campaign that will last through to 2030, and there'll be greater advocacy and focus around Forward Faster over the next 7 years. And certainly we hope that more than the 500 who have currently signed up will join us on this increased ambition track. So the approach is one of tracking progress through public goal setting, public reporting on the indicators, and that being provided through a transparent and accountable process will mean that everyone who signs up for Forward Faster is held accountable for their actions towards these goals. So we've also had to make some choices, and through a process, the UN Global Compact has determined there are 5 key areas. Look, we know there's 17 SDGs, they're all important, but what these 5 have been chosen in these targets, particularly because they have an accelerator effect, which will cascade across other or multiple SDGs. So there are the targets there under gender equality, climate action, living wage, water resilience, and finance and investment. And so we're asking our participant companies and other companies that join the UN Global Compact to sign up to Forward Faster. And I just wanted to also kind of put Forward Faster into the context of obviously a roadmap of events that go through to 2030. Look, there are lots of events in the global calendar. I've just used this slide because it kind of sets out some of the big things that happen every year or most years. And I think it's really important to see the leverage points that we can use, both as a business community in New Zealand or as individuals, to ask for our representatives or the business participants in these events to make sure that they are being ambitious and that we are collectively doing everything we can to meet the 2030 agenda. So to kick off, every year, the World Economic Forum annual meeting happens in January. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we have a special relationship with the World Economic Forum. So that's where we were founded as a UN Global Compact, and we're active in seeking the largest companies in the world who participate in the World Economic Forum to contribute. There's a whole range of regional sustainable development forums that are planned for next year, and they are in March and April. I don't have a date for the Asia Pacific one yet. I think they're still working that out. That leads through to a high-level political forum in July, and then the anticipated Summit of the Future, which is a very serious sounding name. And then obviously, currently people are focused on COP28, but we've got COP29 next year in Q4, and then that obviously repeats on an annual basis. So the thing that I wanted to draw our attention to, and this is obviously the UN is an organization that constantly needs to be focused on foresight and what's coming up next. So look, this can also be personality politics led by the Secretary General or people in key leadership roles, but this Secretary General has focused on our common agenda for the future. This is particularly focused on an agenda for action, which is designed to strengthen and accelerate multilateral agreements, particularly the 2030 agenda. Now, I'm not too sure if you can see that very closely, but some of the different areas in the agenda for the future are a focus on future generations, emergency platform, youth engagement, beyond gross domestic product, global digital compact, information integrity, international financial architecture, outer space, a new agenda for peace, transforming education, and the United Nations 2.0. So I guess this is a reform agenda. It's also modernizing the focus of the world and the world leaders through the UN on these things. But you can actually search them. Those 11 areas I just mentioned all have some policy briefs attached to them. So if you are particularly interested in outer space, you could search and see what the UN's up to in that space. But all of this does obviously link in and dovetail with the the Sustainable Development Goals, and the key milestone that is being worked towards within the UN is the Summit for the Future, and the document that is every UN meeting, these global summits all come up with wonderful documents. Well, the expected outcome document of the Summit of the Future is the Pact for the Future. So that's something that leaders of the world will be involved with, and as a business community and as individuals, we have the opportunity to give our view on what that might be. So I think that's the last slide I've got here, but I just want to put a wider context in terms of this roadmap to 2030, which I've talked about, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, they won't end at 2030. It would be wonderful if we met them all. I'm a realist. If 85% of them are off track, we're not going to get there by 2030, but we do need to do everything we can to meet those goals. So I might leave it there, and happy to come back and answer any questions later. Final plug. Just because we're in a pre-launch mode, we're not very visible and out there at the moment, but if you did want to follow the UN Global Compact, probably LinkedIn is probably our best place. You could search UN Global Compact in New Zealand on LinkedIn, and you can join or follow that page. Otherwise, there is a web presence, but to be honest, that won't be the focus of my attention as we look to launch in 2024. So I'll leave it there.
Well, thank you, Hayden. That was a lot of information to take. Now, before we go to Doug, I will open the floor for 2 questions, and then we can have more questions later on. I think Gina has one. If you have any question, can you raise your hand? I see that Gina has one question. Gina, can you?
Sorry, I was just trying to find my mute button. Yeah, absolutely. So I was really interested in how do the global stats relate to what's happening in New Zealand? So obviously you're new from a New Zealand perspective, but how do we as a country relate to those global stats? Are we similar, or are we quite a way behind?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the ideal would be to have New Zealand examples and New Zealand statistics to compare ourselves with. The honest answer is I don't know, and I think that's something that as we grow our participant base, we'll have more opportunity as they report annually on their progress to, I guess, get a better read of within our participants who obviously are committed to the same framework. That gives us a good ability to compare where our New Zealand companies may be to global ones. But I mean, look, even we've got 15 company participants at the moment. Even if we had 150, I think we'd need a really large sample size for that to be directly comparable. So,
is there any other question from the floor? If not, I have one question. Is there any other? Kindly raise your hand. Or okay, there's none. So Hayden, my question is now, why? What is perhaps 1 or 2 reasons why the performance in the SDG is so low?
Look, I think in that report it touches, as I mentioned, on each of the SDGs, and it focuses in some of that detail. There are sort of obviously reasons why things may have been slowed, particularly in the ones that have gone backwards. A lot of that has been given. The reasoning for that has been the contraction in the economies in different places, the effect of inflation. Obviously, countries, including our own, are coming out of COVID and experiencing, sort of some legacy of the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, that's seen as a huge impact on business, both in terms of their direct leadership and progress. They've had to focus on other areas of their business. The money they had available has had to go further or been stretched. And I think as we come out of this sort of COVID period, even though we've got all sorts of global situations at the moment that are distracting for business, we're trying to get our participant companies focused on 2030 and picking the ball up again and doing exactly what they can, everything they can within their power for the goals at that point.
Thank you. So we will now have one of our panelists, Dr. Doug Boddy, but Hayden, it's possible for you to stop sharing. Yes,
Yes.
please. Thank you.
Yep.
So,
Done.
Dr. Doug Boddy, could you take the chair?
Thanks, Fakhruddin. Absolutely. Thanks very much, Hayden. I really enjoyed that session. I knew a little bit about the Global Compact, but I must admit, not as much as I thought. So thank you very much for a very interesting presentation there. Obviously, in my role on the City Rail Link project, we were very much involved with sustainability from a rating tool. So we go in and we look at our Infrastructure Sustainability Council IS rating scheme, construction design rating tool. So we use that as a way of decision making, but also rating and measuring our performance against those key performance areas and KPIs. So just wondering your thoughts on the like of rating tools, and going from there, is that helping to get there quicker, forward faster, and obviously get to 2030 quicker with tools like that? Or how do we sort of get the industry or the members of the business world that's not taking part in these rating tools or similar schemes or frameworks like the Global Compact to get on board?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously that those tools are practical and useful for on a day-to-day basis, not only at the sort of headquarters level, at the C-suite level of a company, but actually on the ground doing the work day to day. And equally, those tools are supporting your clients and customers in the work that you're doing. So they play a really important role, and they give you obviously the ability to measure against your KPIs. So anything that does that and that is widely utilized is positive. There are so many different tools. I think what we'd all like would be a harmonization or a rationalization of tools, or an ability for those to be more directly comparable with each other, for example. I guess the last thing to say would just obviously the UN Global Compact is a voluntary initiative, but people do pay to participate, so the companies do to pay to join. One concern that we do have is that some of these tools are used knowingly or unknowingly, let's be charitable, to kind of achieve an increase in some ESG scorecard ratings, which, as I mentioned as a possible benefit of engaging in this sort of thing, it would be lower cost of capital. So as the world is coming back, access to lower capital and doing things that demonstrate that give you the opportunity to obtain capital at a lower rate is obviously highly sought after by businesses. We want to just make sure that these tools, systems, KPIs, measures, scorecards, and obviously also our own organization is doing that fairly and transparently. So that's I think one slight concern about the translation of those tools and scores into the financial world.
Absolutely, Hayden, and that leads me nicely to my next point, which was around the need for harmonizing and being consistent, but also at the end of the day, as in projects or businesses, we like to tailor them to the risks and opportunities presenting our own immediate needs, and obviously those in a few years' time. So it's trying to balance that requirement of consistency, transparency, harmonizing, but also tailoring what we need to do and focus on the key things. So it's definitely a challenge, but we definitely find it useful on our project, I must admit, having a consistent approach and having that third-party verification side of things. So that's a key thing, not only for decision making, as you say, but for measuring and reporting against.
I was in Shanghai 2 weeks ago, and our China office actually have had for a number of years a large project on the Belt and Road Initiative Obviously, the China government's focus on huge investment in that area for their own purposes, and the China office of the UN Global Compact has received quite a lot of funding through wider UN sources to promote, obviously, the UN Global Compact, our 10 principles within that large. Well, it's not just one infrastructure project, but hundreds, thousands of smaller, but also probably quite large in the New Zealand context projects. I'll send you a link to some of the publications because they're actually fascinating and they've got a lot of really good case studies. So I will dig out a link and share that directly or via a follow-up email.
Thanks, Hayden. And I think that leads into my final point, really, which is around that sort of messaging and reporting and making sure that, as you say, we're all actually presenting the same thing, or we all understand the common language and common ideas that we're actually sort of reporting against. So I think it's fantastic. I think it's great that Global Compact is there, and I think you're looking for additional support and membership through New Zealand. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. So hopefully it leads to more consistency. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Now shall I call Dr. Bapon to share his experiences and his perspective as well. Dr. Bapon.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Hayden, again, to remind everyone that how short we are to achieving the 2030 goal. And I really enjoy your summary. And this is really threatening for the world as well as the project manager. I think most of us here who are joining as a PMI is organizing this particular series, looking at actually project management point of view. To what does actually interpret to us when actually we're talking about that is getting shortage, and what are the consequences going to happen on the development as well as understanding a proper sustainability of any kind of project. I just to like to also let you know that because we are all actually chasing for 2030, so there is not only SDG, because there are actually five framework is actually chasing each other to reach this milestone. So Sendai framework, Paris Agreement for climate, for urban there is a new urban agenda, and then also there's recently in Montreal, the Kunming, which is like a biodiversity plan. So everyone is chasing for 2030, but there is a quite inherent and interlink between all these framework, but we actually still a little bit working as a silos. And because of our mandate, because of the organization, because each of those things actually managed by different entity. For an example, in New Zealand, the Ministry of NEMA is actually managing the disaster risk reduction, whereas SDG is managed by the Statistics New Zealand. And obviously, there is also an issue with the reporting, that actually how much actually the report actually reported by the country on the achievement or the success. And then also there is a lot of gaps between the data collection process, that okay, how you actually measure those achievements, what are the standardization of the data, and how that data could actually help in the operational domain. Because whatever the data is actually those creating, that actually ultimately to help us to understand our risk in terms of climate risk in terms of transitional physical risk as well as transitional risk, or other kind of project management risk. But I think we are not able to actually capture those kind of aspects quite well to how this kind of data could generate a sort of like an overall risk assessment, and then that could be create a risk management framework for organization, business, as well as individual, I should say. So those are some of the quite important aspects that need to be happen. As coming back from the climate financing side, as you maybe know, that Green Climate Fund, which is a multilateral largest climate financing in the globe, and our mandate both actually mitigation and adaptation 50-50. And when you're looking at those kind of project management, we actually quite heavily look at actually how you considering the investment, how your investment criteria is actually ensuring the sustainability or overall the SDGs, what we are talking about. It's not only the program sustainability, because often actually when you give a project, we look at program sustainability, but we are trying to make sure that there's a financial sustainability in place. because unless you are not able to financially sustainable, you're not able to programmatically sustainable. So that means actually a grant-based program project will not actually sustain quite a long term. So you need to bring out all sort of financial instruments, such as highly concessional loan, blended financing, equity, guarantor, insurance, whatever instrument could be utilized for project management cycle. And that's quite important to look at actually in the climate financing side, but also the project implementation side when you want to make a more resilience community or resilience infrastructure, resilience project, whatever you want to say. So those are the couple of the things that we need to be really considered that actually how that need to be incorporated and what does actually translate when we're talking about the SDG, or because everyone is actually on their midterm review at this moment. So Sendai framework, they come up with their midterm that we are not going to be able to achieve the target. SDG is same. And then also there is a big debate right now going on. I think next week everyone is going to Dubai for the COP. So in the COP, people are a country actually trying to raise this loss and damage. So how actually you understand your loss and damage due to climate change? So, but what are the mechanism actually to understand what are the losses actually due to climate change? Unless you have actually all those SDG data set or the proper historical damage and loss data set to better understand that this is my developmental loss and this is my incremental loss due to the climate change. And that's where actually a big debate is going on and big effort, I think, need to be happen to better understand. And I think that's not for Alturia, for New Zealand also quite same aspect that the climate change actually bringing all this, extreme event as well as cascading and compounding and complex situation. So how we're going to tackle those things, it requires actually quite innovation as well as binded by a risk-based decision-making culture. And the risk-based decision-making culture need to happen actually driven by data. And that's where we need to make sure that the SDG data is actually collected, stored, as well as standardized to better understand our overall risk. So maybe I can stop here. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bapon. There's lots of information in your talk. Now, I would like to set the floor open to any questions, either among the panelists or even from Hayden to any of the other panelists. So, can you kindly raise your hand, if please?
Rawindra, I see there's one from Gina for me. Shall I kick that one off?
Yes,
the question
please.
is, how did you incorporate green project management principles into your project? Thanks, Gina. Yep. So on our project, City Rail Link in Auckland, we are actually using the Infrastructure Sustainability Council rating tool. So that's the IS Design and As-Built Rating Scheme version 1.2. So we're aiming to achieve a rating of excellence. So I think that's 65 points off the top of my head, and that covers a number of the Global Reporting Initiative or SDG aligned topics around the sustainability themes that we've covered in some depth. But the main points, Gina, I would stress on is not just focusing on the one aspect, so the environmental aspect, but actually helping us deliver across the economic, social, and cultural, as well as the environmental aspects and opportunities throughout all the phases. So throughout design, construction, operation, and maintenance, and it's also helping to recognize some of the results that we're achieving, but also to pick up on what Bapon was saying as well, to share some of those results in the wider community as well, and provide the lessons learned as I think a fundamental part of what we're trying to do as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor, or I will start mine? No, to Hayden. So Hayden, I see I think second last slide you showed about the 5 different areas. Now you had no mention on the biodiversity. Is that not an issue?
It certainly is an issue, and I think that's the challenge is when you're trying to simplify and focus focus the attention of business, particularly who really don't like 17 goals, and then the multiple indicators under that. We've had to make some choices. So no, biodiversity is certainly important, and as Bapon has mentioned, there's a multitude of other streams all working towards 2030 agenda in terms of the UN Global Compact. Yeah, those are the ones that our leadership have focused on for, as I think I mentioned, their ability to cascade into the other goals and to accelerate progress across all 17 of the goals. So biodiversity, definitely important, just not one of the ones that made the 5 focus areas. I think you might be on mute.
Yes, Bapon, could you please ask your question?
Well, maybe I just like to have a question to, it maybe goes to Doug again, actually, or maybe Hayden, you can also answer. I mean, obviously, as a citizen or as an organization, always we like to look at actually the sustainable ESG is actually the core part of our heart, because we really like to see those actually implemented. But when you look at actually the economic situation as well as your infrastructure condition, I like to have maybe solarization in my rooftop. Obviously, that will make me more environmental aware as well as sustainable. But when my infrastructure is so poor, I need to fix every day to my window, to my roof, to my gutter. Those kind of sustainability or ESG actually goes out of the window. And same as the project, when you're actually looking at the ESG, it costing you like a 1/3 more, and the client not often actually willingness to pay that kind of additional costing. Another example might be, our New Zealand road network. We could be transform those into a porous kind of materials instead of bitumen, but that could cost us 1/3, 3 times more, and council is not willing. But then on the consequences, you saw the flood in March has created havoc to the whole city. So how you see those kind of compromisation or trade-off between the aspiration versus, the actuality or perspectives? Thanks.
Shall I go first, Hayden? I'll talk very, very briefly just in terms of some of my experience from the CRL project. I mean, you're absolutely right. And, when we're sort of brainstorming and looking at the risks and opportunities, there is definitely things that we would like to press on and try and get across the line. And there are some things that are just not going to happen, from supply chain issues, from whatever it is. There's just, especially during COVID, especially during the times where we need to get material in that's got a lower carbon footprint, or it's going to help us achieve our carbon reduction targets. Absolutely. So definitely a lot of challenges out there. I won't go through the detail. I'll spare you that. But I do share your comments there. I think the main reflection that I would say is it's a starting point. Whilst it's aspirational, whilst it helps having decision making and processes where you're actually starting the communication with the stakeholders. Now, I think that's the main thing, and to try and maybe it's not today that you can actually do one of those great ideas or initiatives or innovations that you really want to do. Maybe pilot it, try it, give it a go. There were lots of examples from our project on that, just didn't quite get over the line. But let's share those lessons and make sure that other people can learn from them. And you never know, next time it might be possible. So that's all I would say. Be optimistic, give it a go, and keep on trying.
If there's no other question from the floor, I have one more question. Okay, so, well, Hayden, so what is your recommendation for the project managers to do? So, because this is a group of project managers. You have portrayed what UNGC is looking at. Bapon has talked about other silos of larger groups. They have complexities on having correct data and everybody seeking the same fund, actually. So but for us project managers, what do you think is the pathway?
Look, I'm really conscious. I've said I'm not in sales mode, but I mean, obviously, we're all individuals in companies or involved in large projects, which with clients that we can leverage and ask them to join the UN Global Compact or join other networks of business networks that are focused on supporting their participants to accelerate their progress towards the UN SDGs. So I think that's the first thing is everyone can individually within their own company or their context or within their projects start asking the questions about whether it's time for the company to look at participating in international networks. And I mean, the one thing I would say about the UN Global Compact is that within the 20,000 participants around the world, that's split obviously into 160 countries, but also having that scale means we do have, when you split it sort of vertically into industries, you have a lot of comparator organizations in different industries. They'll be direct competitors globally, but you can engage with at an industry level. So as a group of project managers, I think you guys are influential. You're across a whole lot of the conversations. You are uniquely skilled at getting towards a result in a time period. So 2030, 7 years, it's nothing new to you. You know how to deliver projects within a time period, and you understand the trade-offs. And I think that's what that last question was, just around as I said, we need to spend $3 to $5 trillion US annually to meet the SDGs. Look, maybe recent events have shown us the world can create that sort of money literally out of thin air. But in terms of getting the consensus and that level of investment is going to require support. So as project managers, I think calling out the need for urgency, and I think also, and Doug, you sort of just mentioned trying out some of these things, putting them up. Some of them won't get through. Some may do, but I think we've got to innovate where we can at different levels and scale, both at a smaller project level. Well, Doug, it's not small, but I mean at a global level as well. We have to innovate, try new things, and work together in new ways to make sure that we've done all we can do.
Okay, I don't see any other question from the floor. Just a few comments. And now, Doug, because you mentioned about the ISC, we PMI NZ, we have created our own toolkit. We looked at the ISC and we thought that we need to put some more information into it, and we came out with the toolkit, which includes about 13 templates actually on various work. So you might want to have a look at that. I think the other thing over here I see is an opportunity for PMI NZ possibly to work with UNGC and to see how we can think together, how we can use our PM skills, because one of the PM skill is integration. So as Bapon mentioned, there are several Sendai, there are several other groups working in silos, and possibly with PMs as our skills is bringing things together, and maybe that's something we can look into in the future. But of course, that is quite a big task. So we start small, looking at projects, but possibly also looking at how to integrate the key information and use those tools. So on that note, if there's, I would like to ask, is there any other questions from the floor? If not, I would like to close this session. I would like to thank Hayden for his time and the presentation. I would like to thank Dr. Doug and Dr. Bapon for their time and the contribution. And I would like to thank all of the other audience members who have joined us today, and hopefully you can join us in our future dialogue sessions. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.